Hello and welcome to the latest episode of The Talking Tradesman. Today I have Jay from JB Painting and Decorating with me. Where have you come from, Jay?
Rochford, Southend.
Southend.
Yeah.
Yeah, bit of a trek, So,
100
massive thank you to Jay for making the effort to come and
Thanks for
talk with
having
me
me, mate.
today. And Jay, let's talk.
Let's go for it, mate. Let's go. 180 miles in.
That's it, mate. We're in now. 180 miles from
Yeah.
door to door.
Door to door, yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't too bad, actually. It's pretty good. Traffic wasn't too bad.
That's because nobody's coming up on a sunny day, mate. They're all
No,
going down.
No, it was fun. Nice little trip. So good to see you in person, see your pretty face.
You make me go red now, mate. No, I appreciate it, mate. As with all the guests, I appreciate all you guys giving up your time. I keep saying this, like without the guests, there would be no podcast. So massive thanks for you for coming up and
thank you.
Coming up to have a chat. So let's find out a little bit about you then, mate. So painter and decorator, a brother of the brush like myself.
Yep.
So let's start at that then. I think, mate. Like, how did you lead yourself into the trades?
So it was around 2008. So I was 17.
Okay.
32 now. I was actually an aspiring professional golfer. And through my winters and in my spare time to raise the funds for my golf career, I actually, with an ex-girlfriend's mum's partner, he was a really good decorator. He dragged me along with him. So sanded down for about 6 months. I went through...
Let's pull it back a little bit. The golfer thing, when did that start? Was that childhood? Did you always play golf?
That was childhood. So, I mean, from toddler age, I used to watch the telly and pick up a plastic club and smash a plastic ball around my mum and dad's living room.
Yeah.
And I was actually, in terms of competing, I was probably around 13, 14 when I started taking it a little bit more seriously. My dad was a footballer, so I was football.
Oh, really?
I was
pro footballer.
No. Well, probably should have been. Could have been. He was in West Ham for all the senior school, but just didn't make it.
Okay.
So I was always football, and I was associated with Ipswich Football Club through my junior days from 7 to 13. And it was only when they cut their development centres, when they fell out of the Premier League in about 2004, I think it was. Then I was like, I don't really want to play Sunday football. I either want to play at top level or not at all, and sacked the football off and went into the golf and kind of just went from there, really. And then got to 17 and needed to earn some money. And the guy called Alan, he said, look, come and do a bit of labour with me. And he was a really good decorator and worked in some really nice houses. And so that's how I kind of fell into the decorating.
How close did you get to the professional golfer stage?
So I turned pro in 2009, 2010, so I was around 18, 19. And I was playing what I would class as League Two football standards. So it was kind of, you pay your entry fee, which was quite expensive, and you got anything from 100 to 140 other golfers that you're playing for your own money as such. So had a good year that first year, still painting in between my golf and through the winters, and I was delivering pizzas of an evening to try and top up my money because I had nothing. You don't have money as a aspiring professional sportsman. So and then I had another year, then I had to qualify for another tour, which is now gone, but I qualified for that. But then you can go to a place called, it was European Tour School, it's now DP World Tour, and it's like £1,700 just to enter the tournament.
Jesus Christ, mate. That's a lot of dough to find as a youngster as well.
So you obviously need a sponsor.
Right.
Ideally, which quite hard to come by, especially back then. So we'd just come out of a recession, 08, 09.
Yeah. I was in business through the 2008 recession.
It was, so times were tough, and I was only young and naive. I was, I suppose, a little arrogant. I was going to be a professional golfer, and I said to my mum and dad, look, I'm doing a bit of painting and decorating and as a fallback. And my golf coach at the time used to say to me, like, why are you doing that? And I used to say, well, just in case. And he was like, mate, just keep doing what you're doing. He's like, your golf's going in the right direction. You've got what it takes to go all the way. But without the money, it's virtually impossible. As I say, £1,700 to enter.
That's
Then
one tournament.
that's the European Tour School.
Right.
I'd had quite a lot of people say they'd sponsor me and I would do this and would do that, and it falls on deaf ear. Doesn't really happen. And then I went to tour school only about 7 or 8 years ago. So back then, when I was playing a lot more golf, I never actually went to tour school because I never had the money. So it's tough, mate. Very difficult. But that's what I brought the decorator out in me, I suppose. As a sportsman, you're always wanting to do better.
Yeah.
I'm never satisfied. So in terms of like my OCD and my work, I always want to do a better job. I think that's something we need, isn't it?
Yeah, do you know what? I think in our trade, mate, I think a lot of people probably exhibit OCD traits and things like that, because I think it's very rare, if not never happens, that we actually walk away from a job fully happy. You know, I don't think I remember any work where I haven't looked and thought I could have done better. But the problem is, realistically, mate, we're under the customer's constraints, aren't we? Because you could do a room this size, for reference, it isn't a very big room. You could spend 6 weeks in here getting everything perfect, every edge perfect, every bit of skirting perfect.
Providing the client wants to pay.
That's the thing, mate, isn't it? You're always, as much as we want to do a perfect job as a professional, the reality is, as much as we say we're self-employed, we're always employed. We're employed by a customer, so we just have different managers every week almost.
Yeah, true.
So it does come down to what the customer wants to pay for, and there's not many people out there that are going to want to pay for 6 weeks work in an average sized room just to get everything perfect. But like on the flip side of that is that knowledge, isn't it, where you think I could have done it a bit better.
Yeah,
but you do have to find
it's
that
just
balance.
I think it's being reasonable, but I think that's the hardest part in our trade, is to manage the expectations of the client. So yeah, if you want it looking like a Rolls Royce, it's going to cost you that money.
Exactly that.
At the end of the day, but always striving, always looking for a better product, always want to do things better. I think that's just, we're always so, with the way of the world at the moment, things do get difficult. So you want to separate yourself from the next. Do you know what I mean? In a way. So you want to do as best as you can to keep yourself busy, and you've got families to support, So
social media is a big part in that though, Jay, isn't it?
Oh, huge.
Because if you were to say you came off social media tomorrow, totally off it, you wouldn't be seeing all of the advances and the work that other people are putting out, or the new products, the new paints, or whatever. You might actually be able to settle in your groove and be content in where you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally right. And I think we had this little conversation earlier. I think sometimes clients are looking on social media and are seeing perfection, and the reality is there isn't perfection in any part of the building trade.
We did, mate. Yeah. So pre-record, we were talking about this whole situation, and I actually said that over the last 12 months, I have had what I feel to be the most fussy, if I'm being honest, unrealistic clients that I've had in the whole 24 years I've been in business. And I'm talking about, when I say unrealistic, because I don't want people going, he's probably just getting snagged on stuff.
It's not the case.
I'm talking about clients telling me that they've found snags that can't be seen for 22 hours of the day, but when a particular light comes through a particular window, there's a slight ripple in some plasterwork. I'm talking that level of criticism.
But that plasterwork, you didn't plaster.
I didn't plaster it.
No.
So
it's just like, but then when you talk about other trades, I mean, this isn't anything against any other trades, but the painter's always considered just above the labourer.
I know.
Or if you can piss, you can paint.
Yeah.
But they're expecting us to put right the plasterer's work. The carpenter comes to us and goes, I've got a bit of a dodgy joint there. Like, can you just put it right? And you think, So are we just above the Labour still, or?
Mate, I hope it's changing. I feel it's changing.
I do.
Certainly within my clients, it's
Yeah.
changing. But there is still that older generation, I'd have to say, that still maintain that. You
I
know.
think the social media is a good part there. So
Mm,
with the likes of Kev, Paint Warrior, and
yeah.
there's a
Massive
few.
shout out to Kev. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Kev. There's a few different decorators that I follow, that I see the way they work,
Mm,
and we aren't your typical, stereotypical carry a bag with a brush and a crate of beer.
mm,
I mean, we've all got the machinery that we've got now to try and provide a better service. So
mm.
I'm hoping we're getting a little bit more respect in
It's
the
weird, isn't
trade.
it? It seems to be a thing that's hanging on to the UK because if you look at other countries, the likes of Australia, America, and even like France, I think if you decorate for longer than about 7 years in France, you're considered an artisan, and they're
Oh, okay.
extremely well paid, like very
Oh,
very well paid trade.
yeah. See, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, let's pack out. Let's get on that channel tunnel, mate. I think that's the one. I'm sure I heard because things like wallpaper installation, which is deemed more specialist now.
Yep.
When I first started in the trade, like that was just part of being a decorator, but there's
Yeah.
quite a lot of people that don't do it now. So things like wallpaper installation, again in France, I've heard figures of like 70 to 80 euros per square meter installation cost.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know what the qualification system is over there or what you have to hold to order to qualify for that. But
Yeah.
yeah, if you're classified as an artisan,
I think
it's very well
I can
paid.
understand that though, because papering. Do you find it a bit of a lottery?
Do you know what, man? It really, with wallpaper, you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
You really do. And that the issue with wallpaper is that some customers, I'll be straight, the likes of your B&Qs and the Satan's own wallpaper, I love wallpaper.
Oh, yeah.
It don't matter how good you are at installing wallpaper, you can't make that look good.
No, it's a
You know,
nightmare.
there's the odd outlier. You'll pick up the odd paper from. In fact, I'm wrong there. Some of the B&Q papers are all right. They stock things like the frescoes and that,
Super
which are
frescoes are okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
generally okay to
As
put
long
up.
as it's paced the wall.
Yeah, yeah. Again, it depends. You can have bad ones, but with experience of hanging the better quality wallpapers out there, like your Cole and Sons and things like
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
that's so much easier to put up.
Is it Osborne and Little?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was a good
yeah.
one. I hung last year at some point, but it was around 240 or pound per roll.
Mm,
But then I've hung some wide vinyl. Have you hung wide vinyl?
yeah,
That's a bit
yeah,
of a
yeah.
sweaty palm moment, I've got to say. But um, I suppose the less people that are doing it, then there is a bit more of a market for the better
Mm.
decorator or the paper
Demand
hangers.
dictates value, Jay.
Yeah, yeah, it
So
certainly
as the
does.
demand is there, the value goes up. But that's one of those things, isn't it, with wallpaper, where if I've never understood why you'd pay a professional decorator to install it and then spend 12 quid a roll. You know,
Yeah, but I've hung £12 a roll papers in the past, or £20 a roll papers, and they've been a dream.
mm,
But then I've hung papers at 75, 80 quid a roll, and you think, oh, this is a nightmare. You have to leave
mm,
your joint, or like, rather than cutting in everything, I've had to leave it to dry overnight and cut
mm,
it off after. And yeah, that's why I say it's a bit of a lottery. You are governed by the quality of the paper, and
yeah,
unless you've hung absolutely every single paper, you read the instructions, the soak times.
yeah.
Most of them go out the window.
I think the biggest issue when it comes to papering and why people step away from it is the risk to reward.
Yeah,
So, because when from our trade's point of view, like if you paint a room and you get it wrong in any way, you just repaint
yeah,
it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
with wallpaper, if you get that wrong, and more specifically, like I personally have hung some very expensive murals,
yeah,
and that, mate, you're on a knife
yeah,
edge
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
you can't get one drop
Of course you
wrong.
can't.
One drop wrong, the whole thing's gone.
Of course it is. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, like the risk to reward there, you could have a couple of grand's worth of wallpaper, and if you get one drop wrong, the whole lot's, you know. I did a job actually once for an interior designer, and I went in to rectify the last bloke. So, here's a lesson to be learned. She couldn't get hold of anybody in the timescale she wanted, so she got somebody that was available now. Very expensive bespoke mural that was
Oh,
made to measure for a room. So it was obviously a square room, four walls, and this mural was measured perfectly. So it would go around and meet on the fourth corner,
Yeah.
like, and the pattern would match.
Wow.
Which, if you're a decorator, you'll understand what we're talking about.
Yeah,
but if
that's
you've
a bit,
got four corners to a room, generally, as you go round, to hit that well is difficult.
Of course.
In fact, I'll give them a shout out. Woodchip and Magnolia made the mural.
Okay.
Mate, that's so nice to hang.
Was
You ever
it
work
good?
with them? Beautiful to work with.
Well, it makes it a little bit easier, but you still,
Yeah,
technique's got to be bang on, isn't it?
The chap that had gone in before me to do it had not understood that there's tolerance at the top and bottom, and he'd hung the mural bang on the very top of the print, and he'd not put a laser level on it, so it had gone
Didn't
out.
realise how much it ran out.
So he'd put the first wall up, and it had already, I think it ran out by about 3 inches, corner to corner. It was considerable. And then the bloke had literally put his tools down and gone, I can't do this, and walked off the job. So I then got the phone call, the tears that, oh my God, can you go and have a look?
So they had to buy it all again.
Had to rebuy, yeah. Luckily, I think she managed to resupply just the one wall because it was numbered drops.
Yeah.
So it was like drops 1 to 8 or 1 to 9 had to be reprinted for the design. But it's still, I mean, the cost was, it was close to £1,000 worth of wallpaper.
Just for that one wall.
Yeah.
Then you come in and save the day.
That's it. Come in, had to strip it. And she was like, well, could you try and peel it off gently and put it back on? Like, it's dry.
Doesn't quite work like that, does it?
Not at all.
Did it come off all right?
Yeah, it come off fine, mate. Come off fine. But obviously it wasn't reusable.
No.
And then had to rehang the whole room properly. But when you know what you're doing, it's okay.
So you got a charge for that though, haven't you?
Oh, Christ, yeah.
Because you think if there's £1,000 a wall, say £4,000 worth of paper.
This is what I was talking about with risk to reward.
You can't hang that for £150 or £200 a day, even, can you?
Because you get it wrong, and you're actually, you could be £2,500, £3,000 out of pocket. So
to go work,
in my mind, the installation cost has got to be relative to the material you're working with.
Yeah.
And I know, again, a lot of decorators probably go ruffle a few feathers, but a lot of decorators will have a flat rate and they'll just charge the same for whatever they do. Personally, I don't think that's right. I mean, if you're hanging wallpapers that are a normal quality and you've got, if you mess up one drop, it's okay. You can you've got excess. But not even that. You've got a rollover is what most people would do. Then fine, by all means, do what you get to do. But if you're working with a bespoke paper that's hundreds of pounds a roll or has a risk factor of in the thousands, why would you do that for your normal rate?
You're just hiding to nothing, aren't you?
Yeah, but people do. People are scared to actually speak up and say, well, actually, Mrs. Smith, you've paid £4,000 for your wallpaper. I'm not hanging it. Let's say it's going to take 2 days. I'm not hanging it for £400 and 10% of the cost. No.
But then I suppose you've got your standard of decorator that can actually hang it. But I suppose the higher end decorator that is able to hang it will know their worth. And I mean, I say to every client, I say, look, if you can get someone that can start tomorrow, 99% of the time, there's a reason. We're all busy. Anyone that's good is normally busy, unless some unforeseen happens. But mate, I'm glad I wasn't the one hanging that paper. By the sound of it, that sounds a bit. But this challenge, isn't it? But as long as you go through your motions and you tick your boxes and you plumb your corners and get it right, and
you work your way up, mate. I think me personally, I can talk about it a bit blasé, but I've been hanging paper since the beginning of going into trade. So I'm like 24 years deep now. And when I first started in the trade, wallpaper was quite common. Like
it's coming back now.
Yeah, it is. When I started in the trade, everyone had whole rooms.
Yeah.
Then it went to feature walls. Then nobody wanted wallpaper. No. Then feature walls came back, and now it's going.
Yes, I'm noticing people are wanting multiple walls now.
Yeah, ceilings as well is another thing. People
Do you know what?
I've
never actually papered a ceiling.
Have you not?
No, not with a decorative paper.
I've done a few. They're effective when they get them right.
Do you plank out?
Depends on the height of the ceiling, mate.
Yeah,
it depends on the height of the ceiling. I've even been known to get a labourer in, depending if you imagine putting a double width wallpaper, American sized vinyl, and trying to do that on your own.
No. It's hard enough on a wall, isn't it?
Exactly. So sometimes it does pay to just get a labourer just to hold it as you go along and smooth it out. Yeah. So
that's good.
But again, it's just knowing what you're working with and making sure you pre-plan. So.
Yeah, decent, mate. Decent. Sounds good.
Boring everyone with decorator talk here.
Yeah, get away from it.
Let's get back to you, Jay. Let's get back to you, my man. So you've obviously at what point did you decide that you were going to go into running your own decorating business, and that golf was? Did there come a point where you had to say, "I'm not going to be a professional"?
Um, I've always believed, and I still do to this day, believe I could have been or could be.
Mm,
Um, I think it was, I mean, Danielle, my partner, it got to a point with me where it was like, I felt a bit bad that I was putting her life on hold. So I was 24, coming up to, I suppose, 25. And it was like, I kind of compared myself and felt like I'm at the stage now where I should be buying a house
mm,
and I want to have a family, etc. And I was putting all that on hold, chasing a dream. So I was living where all my work, I was decorating full time at this stage. I worked for a couple of different painting firms, and I was I'd mastered the craft as such. I'd been doing it now for, say, 7 years
mm,
on and off, but I was pretty much full time now. But everything I was earning, I was still living at home with mum and dad, and all my money was being spent on my golf career. And I just felt bad for my missus, really. And I thought it was time to maybe rein it in. And I was getting really busy with my own private work. And it was like, right, now's the time to kind of go for it, really, and
yeah.
just go fall into my own little business. And
How was that setting up like that?
um,
Jumping. What age were you at that time?
so I would have been 20, around 24, 25. So
Okay,
it's
so
been
you'd done like 7 years with
so I'd
the
been,
other
yeah.
person.
So yeah, I suppose just shy. So I've been around 8 years, 8, 9 years on my own now. So yeah, maybe 23, 24.
Okay.
It's scary because
Mm,
you're inexperienced. I was working for like friends of family and stuff. So you're getting the work because I think they're probably supporting you, and you're a bit cheaper because you don't know your worth. And then all of a sudden, now you're the one that's, you got a van to insure, and you're collecting your materials, and then you're out
mm,
quoting jobs. And as you would know, I'd say 30, 40% of our business, you haven't got a brush in your hand.
yeah.
And
Easily.
uh,
Yeah.
maybe more.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I was inexperienced, and I still to this day, I'm sometimes just a busy fool. Like, I find it very difficult to
Mm,
say no to a client. I'm learning slowly. Um, it's hard. Anyone starting a business, mate,
mm,
they don't realise like there's a lot more involved. So even for people that don't run a business that have maybe used a tradesman, you don't realise how much we appreciate that.
mm.
But it's hard. Anyone, good luck to them. Like,
It
it takes a
is.
certain type
It's
of person.
I have to sort of make this point now and again, because talking about mental health and construction and the issues in construction, it can seem a little bit like I'm
Yeah,
like beating down on the trade, like it's a
yeah,
bad
yeah,
place to be. I love it. Like I wouldn't have it any other way than running my own
yeah,
business, but there is no mistake, and it is difficult. I mean,
yeah. See, I think it does affect you mentally because
mm,
it's. I think unless you run in your own small business, and all other trades and decorators that I've spoke to will agree with this, that you get the phone call, they want you to view a job, you might be running behind on another job, and
mm,
you're just rushing around. And I always have this kind of fear of letting people down, or, oh, what happens if they look at my quote and think it's too much? Are they going to tell all their friends that I'm a
mm,
rip-off merchant, when I've actually just taken into account the whole job? And there's a lot of things that, I mean, people
yeah,
don't ever go into Hugo Boss and say, well, that seems like a lot of money.
no.
Whereas with a tradesman, that's one thing, I overthink things like that. So it's tough mentally, physically. It's not easy.
There is, mate. I mean, you've touched on one of the main things. There's so much unpaid hours that go
Yeah,
into running a business. I mean, if you take the average quote, so like speaking personally for me,
yeah,
I work in my local area. I've set kind of like a limit on myself of an hour out, hour back at
same,
most.
same.
So if we take the extreme of that and we say an hour out,
Yeah,
so if I go to quote a job that's an hour out, that's 2 hours
yep,
just in travel. I might be there for half an hour. Bigger job, maybe I'm there an hour.
yep,
So, if we go for 2.5 hours there,
yep,
then I've got to go home and work it out, maybe another half an hour,
yep,
write it up, another half an hour.
yep.
have
5
any
hours gone.
conversations. Yeah, half a day. It's half a
Yeah,
day,
yeah, done.
and that's one quote.
That's without the cost of diesel getting
Yeah,
there and back. And
and you might not ever hear nothing.
I
So
think that's the biggest thing. And I think
yeah,
that really,
how do you feel on that, Jay? Do you think customers should let you know either way?
I think out of courtesy, yes, because
Mm.
the way I look at it is you might get chased. They contact you, and they ask, first thing they normally ask is, what's your availability?
Always,
Which
yeah.
you kind of try and tell them that, being realistic, you're going to have to wait for a decent job.
Mm.
And then you arrange the viewing. I always then go with a follow up just to confirm, right, I'll see you on X, or on the way, I'm on my way, see you soon, or something like that. And then you view the job. I then try and say to them, look, I'll try and get something over to you within the next 3 to 5 days. Time to sit down and take my pictures and my videos. But then I've got a life as well. So you're at home with my little girl or my missus, and then they're chasing you.
Mm.
Have you got a quote for me yet? Have you got a quote for me yet? And in that time, you've already been and maybe viewed another. Sometimes I view 5, 6, 7 jobs a week.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they're chasing you for your quote, and then you send the quote, and all of a sudden it goes quiet, and you think it's a bit one-sided. So
Yeah.
I would much rather someone come back to me and just say, look, I've read your quote. Thank you ever so much for your time. I found somebody a little bit cheaper. In which case, then I would openly have a discussion with someone and justify why there's someone cheaper, because I'm reasonable and I consider myself a very good value. I'm not the cheapest, but you get what you pay for. So I would much rather someone tell me than just blank me. It's like,
I think that's a perfect
it's mental.
response.
Absolutely mental.
My feedback on that is I would say that's quite rare. I think most customers that don't go with me, for example, I never hear nothing. But I've developed it used to really irritate me in the
It
early
still does
days.
me. It does.
I've moved past that, where
Yeah.
now, for my own mentality or my own mind, when I put a quote out personally now, I put it out and I forget about it. The minute I hit send on my email, that's
It's
it.
forgotten.
And a lot of the time now, I'll have a response maybe a week or two later from a customer accepting the quote, and I'd have to remember who was that again? Because
Well,
as soon as the quote's gone, I've forgotten
do you still
about
get
it.
the buzz though when you get the acceptance, or what goes through your head when? For me, I priced one recently, and they come back to me within about 20 minutes saying the job's yours, and I'm thinking, oh no, what have I not seen? Do you know what I mean? Am I too cheap? Like,
Yeah.
has someone else like seen something that I haven't? And
It depends, mate. I think there are certain jobs that I go to quote that are maybe a little bit different, a little bit exceptional,
yeah,
and I walk away thinking I'd like to get that one.
yeah. Don't need it, but I
And
want it.
don't get me wrong, if any of my customers are listening, I fully appreciate every one of you. But having been in business for as long as I've been in business, and in the trade for as long as I've been in the trade, there are certain elements of it to me now that are very robotic, very, it's just matter of course.
Of
Like,
course,
I've done it.
yeah.
Let's be honest, mate. There's no decorator out there, I believe, that can get excited about painting a white room white.
No,
going to a
not
new
at all.
build and just refreshing it. They're all important. Those jobs are important.
Of course, they pay the bills.
They pay the bills, and we do it to the best of our ability. But that thing inside you where you go like, oh, I'm buzzing to get to that one.
Yeah.
Certain jobs.
I've had one recently, actually. I got recommended to a guy. He's just bought a bit of land, and he was open to tell me what he'd spent. He bought a bit of land, cost him £500,000. He spent £500,000 on this build, and it is beautiful, really lovely build, and in the middle of nowhere. So I got recommended by a bespoke kitchen company. So it's quite nice. You'd be kind of highly recommended by a bespoke company, so the customer knows they're going to get a good job. Turn up there, have a really good meeting. It's not fully ready. There's areas that were still to be plastered, and customer says, can you price it? So I had the drawing, and I probably spent around 3 hours pricing the job, and worked out my meterage rate, because every decorator gets their kind of, you drive away from a job and you get like a rough inkling of what you think the job's worth. But this was quite a large one, so the meterage rate actually came in with where I felt the job was worth, and went back to the client. and the client seemed happy with the price, but the nearest, bear in mind there's me and I've got two guys working for me, the nearest time I could get someone to him to start would probably be around 3 to 4 weeks.
Mm.
And he actually come back to me and said, oh, thank you ever so much. He said, but I've got someone starting tomorrow.
Oh, Christ.
So just spent £1 million.
And he's gone for a next day blow.
It was a 12 grand job, like,
Yeah.
for me to do, but I was so excited. I was actually, that's probably the most gutted I've been about not winning a job.
I'll never understand that one, Jay. I
I
really
don't.
wouldn't. And all too often you hear this is that there's some fantastic builds out there, and then they get to the end, the final bit, and then they scrimp on the finish. And the finish is the only thing you see. So
That's where decorators are the most important trade. I mean,
absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
Money was no issue.
Yeah.
I know money was no issue. I'd done my due diligence and I'd
So it
looked
was
into the
time.
company. It was purely the fact that he wanted something starting, but the project had been ongoing since COVID.
Mm.
He bought the land in COVID, and it was like, it's been this long. I dread to think, bearing in mind, just for an example, like the kitchen family area was, it was about 10 meters long, about 7 meters wide, with a vaulted ceiling at 4.7 meters to the pitch.
Wow.
It was a beautiful job.
That's a high ceiling, mate, isn't it?
So it was all going to be towers. He had a bespoke aluminium window at the end of the room, and that was all custom made. So I dread to think that was probably cost more than my full decoration of the house.
Yeah.
And it was all going to be obviously protection on the windows. We was going to mist coat via a spray. It was all going to get machine sanded, cleaned, and go through the motions. And someone's going in there and brush and rollering it, and it's just crying out for a sprayer.
You put money on it, it'd be a day rate chap as well.
Well, I know they actually priced it.
Oh, really?
So they were around 25% cheaper, but no sanding, no real preparation. They're just going in and painting it all white.
Tragic.
I quoted to do all colours and top branded products as well. They're just coating the whole lot in a white contract matte.
Oh,
so
maybe you'll get the redecking.
I don't think I want
it.
I don't think I want it. I just, I think that's where the respect comes in. I mean, I respect the clients come to me and said, "Look, I'm going to use somebody else." I tried calling him like when I was quoting, just to kind of just say, I explain, this is where I've not just plucked a figure out of thin air. Like, I've fully worked it out a meterage, and because I wanted the job, I didn't need the job, fortunately, but I'd rather just have the conversation, just be open and say to me, look, can you do anything? I would have actually gone in on a weekend just to get it started, because it was that
I've got to admit, mate, I'm quite privileged, I guess, in my business position these days, because I've built up quite a loyal customer base. I think probably a lot of the jobs that I do, I don't quote against people.
Yeah.
Which is really fortunate. But I've also got to the point now where I know for a fact I'm not going to be the cheapest. So when somebody approaches me, if they turn around, and I had this 2 weeks ago, where somebody actually said to me, can you come and price this job? So I said, yeah, okay, sorted out a time and date. And then they followed up with, just to let you know, I've got another two lads pricing it. So, essentially, if you're the cheapest, you'll get the job.
Saved you a trip.
It did, yeah, because I've got no qualms about it. I said straight there, and then I went, okay, I really appreciate you letting me know. I'd like to respectfully withdraw my interest in the job.
Yeah, which I think is...
And he was a bit like, what, why? And he kind of got a bit defensive, like, well, I'm entitled to get more prices. So, of course you are. Of course you are. But if you're looking for value, that's not my sales point. If you're looking for the cheapest price, that's your prerogative, but that's not going to be me.
The thing is, we spend... As you spend a lot of money on your products and your machinery and stuff that you use. Without the experience part of it, just your tools, you've geared up to do a higher end job. Yeah. You're not going to use expensive tools and be the cheapest.
When the customer's telling you that price is what they're looking for before even discussing the specification, before you even get a chance to discuss the fact that you've got all the latest tools, kit, machinery and everything and what you will do to deliver the job to the best of your ability, they're already telling you we're looking for price.
So is that something, so in terms of saving time for us, is it worth maybe seeing some pictures of a job before we go and view
Potentially.
and give a guideline.
Look, I think the thing is, Jay, and I'm very respectful of the fact, like, somebody else said this to me the other day, talking about tradespeople, and they were saying the funny thing, especially with social media, is with the trades, you are either the best or shit. There's no middle ground.
Yeah.
But the reality is, there are middle ground painters. There are slightly better than average. There are exceptional.
Yeah.
There are all these different grades of decorator and any other trade. So I think it's just like we said before about knowing your value, knowing your place, knowing your worth, and knowing what kind of work you're after.
Yeah.
So if you're looking to be the cheapest, but you know you can get in and out quick and still make your money, brilliant, fine. All power to you. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's not where I'm at.
No.
And recognizing that, you know, I'm not going to compete with, to me, it's almost like a different ball game. It's like me being a pro footballer and competing against somebody playing netball. Like, they're different sports to me.
So there's no point even pricing.
There's no point playing the game.
No.
So I would rather just withdraw my interest respectfully and leave it at that. I'll explain why. But I also think that there's value, like, in terms of my value personally with my business, I think of it as a pyramid. So you need those lads at the bottom doing the quick in and out, cheapest job going. We need those to illustrate, okay, well, that's what you get for that.
Yeah.
But if you use me, I'll bring the sanders, I'll bring the equipment, and I'll deliver this finish.
Yeah.
But you got to pay for it. Like you said, you want Rolls Royce, you pay for a Rolls Royce. Yeah. So it's the issue that we have, I think, with customers is that one, isn't it, where they want to pay for a Ford Focus and expect a Rolls Royce to be on their drive. That's where the problem is. It's that difference between expectation and what they want to pay.
And being reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally.
That's it. And you can't, and maybe where I feel sorry for the lower value painters or any other tradesmen, I keep referring to painters because that's us.
We do.
But where I maybe feel sorry for the cheap in and outs now is they're going to be getting compared on social media to the finishes that your Rolls Royces are delivering and expecting, well, hold on, what, you know.
But I think it's easy for everyone to up the game. I mean, we could, it's not what we like to do, but you could go in and tosh, what we'd class as toshing, not sand anything and just paint it. I mean, I've got some clients that have got rentals where you openly will say, we'll come in and freshen up.
It's a clean-up job.
You're only giving one coat to a ceiling. You're not going to machine sand the ceilings and walls or anything. So I think as long as they're on the page, they know what they want and that's what they're going to pay for. But then don't come out with your mirror or with your
torch,
your magnifying glass or your torch and go, well, hold on, I can see it. So you can have good or you can have cheap, in my opinion. But it's just trying to manage that expectation, which...
It is, and knowing your worth and not wasting your time. Because you can't compete with that.
You can regain money, but you can't regain time, can you? Well, so I'd rather people waste me money than me time. Yeah. But so, yeah, back to the question, definitely text me and just tell me that you're getting someone else. Yeah. I just think it's a bit courteous, in my opinion. But.
No, I agree. As I say, I think it would be lovely if that was the case, and even just some constructive feedback. We're going with somebody else because they're cheaper, or we're going with somebody else, you know.
I won a job recently, probably about 6-7 weeks ago. A customer's booked in for June. They'd had 3 quotes. I was the most expensive of the 3, but she actually saw the value in what I was providing. So
yeah,
they're quite rare though. Do you find? Like,
I've had that.
Yeah, it's nice though, isn't it? That they've actually appreciate what goes in.
Yeah. So I've got an analogy that I refer to, and it's kind of where I market my business now.
Yeah.
So for reference, my own painting and decorating business, I target high-end domestic. That's what we do. That's what we specialise in. I'm not a snob. I'll work anywhere as long as they'll pay, but my rates are the same for what I do. So we target high-end domestic, and the way I like to think of that is it's the Rolex in terms of nobody wears a Rolex to tell the time.
No.
They wear the Rolex because it says something about them.
Yeah, get that.
So I like to target the customer that want to use me to say something about them. Somebody that wants to use the better, the best, whatever you want to say, the want to use premium, because their focus isn't value, it's quality. It's
Yeah.
the quality of the job. And that is right from day one. That's you all down to floor protection, cleanliness, communication, presentation. All this stuff makes up the package of what you're
Yeah.
selling.
Yeah.
So
Totally right.
that's what I like to do. And to me now, if so, and don't get me wrong when I say that, it's like, well, my prices aren't sky high,
No.
but I feel that I know where my value's at.
Yeah.
And I price everybody accordingly. I won't look and, say, oh, it's a mansion, my prices have gone up 50%.
Yeah.
They're the same rates for everyone. But I'm very clear on the kind of customer that I am targeting with my business now.
And do you find that you can kind of siphon that out by literally the wording of a text message?
A lot of the time.
I.e., or a platform that you've maybe received.
Yeah, a lot of the time.
So I try and avoid Facebook.
Mm.
I've had it a few times. I had one last year at some point, and it was like, oh, I've had a quote for £200 to redecorate my lounge. Can you beat it? And I'm like, what do you want me to beat, the quality or the price? And it was like, look, I'm ever so sorry. I'm afraid the job's not going to be for me. But I find that seems to be what Facebook does. I mean,
generally, yeah. I have to say I have had some. In fact, my biggest domestic job to date has come through Facebook.
okay.
And that was like a £6 million house, full refurb, inside, outside. I've then gone on to work for the family and
Wow.
like huge job, fantastic customers, and that came through Facebook. So I do keep an open mind to
that's
it.
on the other end of the book.
But generally speaking, yeah. When it starts off with how much for this,
Without
like,
seeing it.
yeah, how much for a bedroom?
Oh,
How much for a lounge?
that's mad.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
can you give me a rough idea to decorate my lounge?
Not even seen your lounge yet.
What? Yeah,
See,
exactly.
I've decorated bedrooms for 300 quid. I've decorated bedrooms that probably would have cost, I don't know, £2.5 grand. It's like,
Yeah.
it would be nice if we could just go and have like a set price list, but every job's different, and 9 times out of 10, you don't know what until you start actually sanding a surface. You do not know what you're coming up against. Sometimes
I've decorated like a large master bedroom, say 40 square meters a wall, average sort of size, I guess.
Yeah.
In and out in a day. Just freshen up, in, out, quick once over with a sander.
Yeah.
Get it all just freshly painted in a day.
Decent method, yeah.
And then the job I did last week was a small room, a spare room. It took me 4 days.
Yeah.
Because of the spec, because it was stripping the paper, sealing the walls, sanding everything back, lining everything, feature wall, repaint. Like, it was more of a renovation job.
Yeah.
And that took me 4 days. So it's how long's a piece of string.
It's hard, isn't it? It's so difficult to give a set. It's not like,
I don't know why we get it so much. Can you imagine texting a builder and going, all right, mate, how much for an extension on the back of my house?
Yeah, well, you wouldn't do it, would you?
Nah.
You wouldn't do it. I mean, sometimes I kind of question, why do I deal with the public?
Yeah, but I guess, again, it's part of business, Jay, isn't it? We have to filter through, and eventually we get the customers that we need to stay busy.
I mean, I've got some really good customers. I've got probably a handful that I don't price the work. You kind of, you do the work, or they'll message and say, I'm going on holiday this date. Can you come in? Does it work with you? Let me know how much at the end. But I think I actually do myself over in that sense as well, because you get to the end of the job and I panic. I'm a bit of an overthinker, if you haven't gathered. So have I spent too much time on this? I hope they don't think I've taken the mick.
I hate that.
I hope they don't think I've been asleep all week. You've done your graft kind of thing, but they don't. All they see, they come in sometimes and they just see a different colour. They don't see that you've had 10 airline cracks to rake out and repair. So it's hard.
I'm the same, mate. I've a few very good customers like that tell me, don't worry about it, just come and start. And I insist. I'm like, look, I just feel better giving you, even if it's a ballpark.
Yeah, just so
because the anxiety at the end, like say if they're on holiday and then you put a bill in for 2 weeks' work plus materials, and you can be at 3-4 grand, and then it just feels like when you look then and you look at the room and go,
does it look like I've done that much?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
as long as they realise what's gone in, but it's when the tick comes up that the text is sent, I go like, I hope they don't what are they going to think?
The worst is when it says red.
And then they don't
And then you
reply
get
for
nothing,
2 days.
yeah.
And I panic about things like that, because you don't want to be perceived as someone that's, you're not ripping off, you've done a proper job. But there is a lot of things in our trade that go on that you don't see, or that you shouldn't see.
Because we cover it up. Yeah, because we cover it up. So
it's hard. I suppose there's other trades that are similar. Well, I suppose there isn't really, is there?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
if your
I
electrics
guess,
work,
yeah, I mean, that's
you've done a good job.
self-explanatory. But I guess all the trades, we all do bits where you have to put work in that then gets covered up, or that you don't end up seeing.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe things like, I don't know, maybe like plumbers, for example, putting a bathroom in, they're doing all the pipe work and they cover it all up afterwards.
Yeah.
And customers are never going to fully appreciate what it takes to do that, because they haven't got the knowledge, and rightfully so, because we're the professionals.
But do you think, I mean, where people say, oh, as we said before, if you can piss, you can paint, almost feel like people can try and haggle you. Whereas, are they going to do that with a plumber? Are they going to do that with an electrician?
Yeah, I don't know. Personally, I haven't had it for a while. And I don't know whether it's because of how I now present myself.
Yeah.
I don't feel that I would come across as being approachable to haggle. I don't think. I haven't had it for a long time. I used to when I was younger.
Yeah.
So maybe it's the way I'm subconsciously presenting myself when I go to quote.
Okay.
I don't know. But yeah, I haven't had it for a while. But again, touching on what I was saying before, I'm kind of pushing into
higher end.
My customers are not focused on don't get me wrong, they're very sensible people. If you try and rip them off, they'll know.
Yeah, of course they will.
But it isn't their primary focus. Their primary focus is how you get to do the job, how you get to present yourself, how you get to manage the job and the finished product. Secondary to that is we'll just check the price is okay. I think it's more like that,
Yeah. So they're within a range, not going to have a shock.
Yeah, and I think maybe there's a mutual level of respect, or maybe they would rather, I guess, maybe even pay a bit more and have reassurance that the job's going to be done properly, rather than try and knock a few £100 off me and think, is he going to cut a corner?
Yeah,
I don't know. I haven't had it in a while, Jay. So,
well, yeah, hopefully I don't get it. I've been okay. Just I have had it. Do you know what I mean? In the past, and try and avoid it, just because we want to do the best job we can, don't we? So,
well, we'll get into that, mate, because I know there's a couple of reasons and a couple of things that you wanted to talk about.
Yes.
Relating to business and mental health and your own journey.
Yeah.
Which one did you want to start on?
My non-payer.
Let's go for that. Let's go for the non-payer.
Yes.
So I know you've again pre-record, so these listeners won't know, but you've told me that you had quite a serious issue with that at a bad time in your life, as well. So it was like in fact,
double whammy.
Yeah, rather than being, I feel like I'm being secretive here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So at the same time as you were expecting your daughter,
yes,
you had a serious issue with a non-payer.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, so it was a friend at the time, had renovated his own house, self-managed, his own build, and he'd used me before. He'd recommend me to other people, knows the standard of work. I think looking back now, he may have gone over budget. And obviously, as you know, being a last trade, just started finding unrealistic kind of, he was just completely unrealistic and unreasonable. Just find it, there was areas of plasterwork that was poor. Again, with the lighting that we spoke about earlier, it was south facing or west facing, and the light was shining across at a certain time, and it was appearing patchy, but it was just shadowing. And I'd put coats and coats and coats of paint on it just to prove a point. I told him what it was, and in the end, I had one final day to go and finish. I couldn't even tell you. The total job was like £4,300. I dread to think how much my day rate would have worked out, because I just kept going backwards and forwards. I was doing weekends, evenings, the odd day when I could, because it was well behind schedule.
Was the whole amount outstanding, or were you getting paid incrementally?
No, so I had taken, I'd started the job in August of 2020. And I was actually sending a message, I believe, in February 2021, still trying to do work.
Christ, man, is that 6 months, isn't it?
Yeah. So it was a long, bearing in mind there was, as quoted, 2 weeks worth of work, realistically.
So you were going back and forth for 6 months?
Yeah.
For the same price?
Hadn't adjusted my money. I was just trying to make it work for him.
Jesus Christ, mate.
Working behind other trades.
And how many days? Because you weren't full time for 6 months.
No.
No. How
No.
many days do you reckon you put into that?
Oh, mate, I couldn't tell you. I could not tell you. I know I was there Christmas Eve up to about 9 o'clock at night. I was doing what I could to try and do the job for him without interfere too much with my own family life. I reckon I must have probably in the end earned about 100 quid a day. But I just kind of, where I was fitting it in my evenings and my weekends, because the job was never ready to go full Monday to Friday in normal working hours. So I didn't even think of the money. I wasn't even fussed about the money at the time. It was just like, look, I want to get this job done for a mate and walk away. It was done out of hours, so it wasn't really taking a toll on my salary as such, I would say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I dread to think how much. I didn't earn anything really as a business. I didn't even earn wages, I shouldn't imagine. But then he decided, with 1 day left, 1 day of work left, I'd text him on the Friday evening, said, I'll beat you in the morning to start on the Saturday. And he then decided 6 months later that he wasn't happy with the work and that he wanted to get a snagging company round to snag my work.
A snagging company?
To come and snag my work, yeah. 6 months after I'd started. Bearing in mind,
Wow.
he had made 3 payments.
Yeah.
One in August, one in November, one in January. So he's made 3 payments. I had a key to the house, but he wasn't happy with what I'd done.
I think it's worth pointing out at this point, actually, mate, because the statistics when it comes to mental health in construction, and sadly the amount of people that take their own lives, the 2 worst affected trades are painters, decorators and plasterers. So, and we're the finishing trades, and it's speculation, but my speculation is that 1, it's one of the most isolated trades. We do a lot of work on our own. But 2, that plays a part in it. So when you talk about site work, and like you said, generally builds go over budget.
Yeah.
Like it's very often that they come under budget or even on budget. They're generally over budget. And if things are getting squeezed and the pot is running low, it's us that catch the brunt of that.
It is, yeah.
And what's one way of getting out of paying is to decide that actually the work is not satisfactory.
Yeah.
So it's quite a common thing, unfortunately. And not only that, we also get the brunt of everything else, like you said, touching on, if anything goes wrong or the plastering work isn't good enough, the carpentry isn't good enough, it's then us that has to put it right. And quite often that's assumed that will be done at the same cost.
Yeah, so this is the thing. I'd given a quote. It was more of an estimate because it wasn't fully finished yet, and it's hard to price a job completely accurate when you haven't seen the plastering.
I've had that conversation so many times where you get people, because I've quoted off plan in the past and all that, and I always caveat it with, this quote is based on everything being adequately, all the other trades adequate work, so I shouldn't have to fix the carpentry or fix the plastering.
Nope.
But then when you turn up, it's just expected. It's like, that bit up there, deck is a bit, can you pop your sander over that?
Cut a hole out and had to patch it in. And there was a hell of a lot of that. And I just did it because he was a friend and I just wanted to do it because I wanted to finish his house for him. And I was just doing it because it wasn't I was a mug, really, looking back now. But
so what did you say when he said about getting a snagging company in?
I gave him 3 independent companies locally. So I sent him 3 companies and said, look, pick one. Let me know when they're coming and we'll have a meeting, because I knew what would happen. And then he decided, he said, oh, when I haven't got time, when I'm free, I'll get one. So I chased him a week later and said, like, any news on a snagging company? Oh, not yet. Still busy. Another week went by. I sent him another message, and then he decided that he wasn't going to get one because it was only his opinion that mattered.
Right.
He didn't need someone to snag it. It was just his opinion. And so, yeah, he'd made his mind up that he wasn't going to pay. So there's no way that I was going to accept that. And I'm not saying that we do everything we can to as perfect as we can, but say there's something that I've missed. You might get a little run on something. You just go back and rectify it. No trouble at all. But this house, mate, literally, it was immaculate. And in the end, I had to issue it for court because I wasn't going to let him take the piss out of me.
But how did that have like a toll on you having to even go through that?
Yeah, it did affect me a lot. I mean, bearing in mind at the time I was going through pregnancy with my missus, go through a difficult time in pregnancy. So we actually came back from a scan in London one day, and I went back to said non-payer's house that evening to decorate. And I was in tears on his driveway because we just had some bad news at a scan. And you just think, like, how could you possibly do this to someone?
Do you mind me asking what the news was, Joe?
This was one part of it. So they said that my little girl potentially had a cancerous tumour and we may need to abort pregnancy.
So they could see that on the scan?
Yeah, so they'd seen there was a mass and there was a risk that it could have been cancerous and maybe need to abort and basically give birth. Around, I think we was 30 or 32 weeks pregnant at that stage.
So late on.
Yeah, you're a long way down the line. Like, the bedroom's already done. You've already got a load of clothes. And yeah, it was tough, very tough. And he knew that we was going through as well.
Yeah.
He was aware of that. And I was on his driveway, like, crying like a baby. We just had this. And then not long after that, he's then decided not to pay me. And you think, like, these people need to experience something a bit more serious in life than the ceiling looking patchy, you know. It's like, but it does have a toll, mate, because you kind of panic on every job. I panic on every job. You do the best you can. It's like, oh, I hope they like it. What happens if they don't? And you think, oh, I don't really want to go down that route again.
It rocks you, mate, doesn't it? It does. I've had it when I've had awkward customers. You do start, there's a bit of self-doubt kicks in then.
Yeah, have I done a bad job?
Yeah, am I actually as good as I think?
Yeah, mate, it's relatable. But
I think part of that is actually what makes you a good tradesperson.
Yeah.
Is because if you ever get to that point where you feel that you're perfect and you've got nothing to learn, there's probably an issue there. But having that care and caring about your job and the quality of your work, I think it's quite a natural thing to have those doubts, but it doesn't make it any easier.
No, it's very difficult. We do our best at the end of the day, and what else can you do? But then, after that, I mean, we then went through. He actually then came back, so it all ended up going through to court. I pursued it in court because I knew I had all my videos and photo evidence, etc. So it was I knew I couldn't lose. But he then had the cheek to come back and counterclaim me, saying that I had created £4.5 worth of damages in his house whilst preparing with my sander. So not only did he not pay me £1,300,
he tried to take £4.5 off you.
He tried taking £4.5 off me. Yeah.
What was his basis for that?
My sander had created damage to walls. The sander had run into corners and damaged the corners of the walls and stuff. I don't know. Through 12 layers of paint. I'd ended up putting a mist, so as spec'd, mist coat and 2 coats to a ceiling.
Yeah.
In his master bedroom ceiling. It was finished. He then, because it was vaulted, decided that he wanted a durable paint on the vaulted ceiling.
Right.
Kind of makes sense. I advised him of the vinyl content and the reasons not to. Applied 3 further coats. Still wasn't happy. He said, I was getting better with every coat. Can you apply more? Applied another coat. So we're at 7. And then in the end...
And the room ended up about that big.
I was tiny, mate. Couldn't even get out of there.
That's it.
It turned out that he then went... he said that he took it upon himself and then solved the issue by buying a flat mat for the ceiling, which I'd already finished it in, and it was fine. And he'd already paid for that part of the works back in August, and we're now in November or September. Oh, it's just unbelievable, mate. But yeah, and then claimed that I'd created damage in there and bits and pieces.
So did you start the court proceeding?
Yes.
Yeah. Just for anyone that might be listening, mate, because I'm always conscious that somebody might be out there listening that is in a similar position with like a non-payer.
Yeah.
What is that process? How easy is it?
It's very difficult.
Okay.
It's not easy.
Personally, I've never took anyone to court, so I don't know myself.
I never had either. Fortunately, I had someone helping me out that I won't mention. There's a lot to do. I couldn't just say to you, right, I'm taking you to court. You've got to give a notice of intended action and as part of like a pre-action protocol. So you've got to give them the opportunity to kind of be amicable, I suppose. So yeah, it's tough. Mentally, it's tough. He ended up hiring a solicitor, and he kind of dug himself a hole. There was lies. He got another friend to provide a quote for the works to be wrecked.
Mad though, Jay. So
Unbelievable.
Solicitors ain't cheap.
He was trying to bluff me.
And rather than pay you £1,300, he went and got a solicitor.
Yep.
Which probably racked that up in a few meetings.
Yep. So then, but then I must have spent somewhere between 200 and 300 hours defending his false claim and pursuing my legitimate claim for monies owed, whilst going through pregnancy with what we had. And so this was about literally a month before my little girl was born, was when I issued court proceedings.
Wow.
So trying to...
It's these kind of things that fortunately didn't with you, but can break people.
Yeah, I don't know how I would have reacted to it had I not been going through something else. It might have affected me a lot more. But it was kind of second best in my life at the time.
Your focus was on your daughter.
I kind of, as much as I didn't want to obviously have someone take me for a mug, I had this little girl that was meant to be born, scheduled to be born on a day, and there was a risk that she may be born not breathing, depending on the mass and whether it was restricting her airways, and there was a load of different things. Fortunately, obviously, it wasn't cancerous.
We'll keep that separate because we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yep.
Let's focus and talk through the court thing and how that went and all the rest of it for now, and then we'll come back to your daughter.
So yeah, where was we before? I've lost myself
so him
now.
counterclaiming against you for
That's
£4,500.
So
instructing a solicitor and
counterclaimed, fabricated a quotation to rectify my works, undated quote, spelling mistakes on the quote, the same as spelling mistakes in his own paperwork.
Right.
So there was no quote. It was all fabricated. I highlighted it all to the solicitors, who were just, I think they knew what he was about. I think they were just taking his money as well. I think they were just, we've got one here, just kept taking the money, taking the money.
Of course they will. Yeah, I've had my own experience of solicitors, and that's exactly what they'll do.
They are the only winner.
Yeah, of course they are.
In a court
Always.
case.
Yeah.
And yeah, in the end, long story short, after about 2 years of backwards and forwards, and God knows how many. I think I went through 10 cartridges of ink. Um, the hours was unbelievable. I ended up getting victory in court.
So you got a court date?
They actually tried to. They were saying that I was being unreasonable in my offers of settlement.
Right.
Obviously now reasonableness became a thing
Yeah.
in his life. So they were saying that I was being unreasonable and they were trying to withdraw their counterclaim
Yeah.
after all this time. So I'd highlighted so many flaws and there were so many different ways that I could have actually gone with it, I think. So it actually went to a hearing. It wasn't the actual court date that was supposed to be. That was still going to be coming up. But there was a hearing where the judge just, along with me, virtually laughed at him. It was just, and he had to pay. He had to pay me double what he owed me, and I believe he paid a solicitor about $6,000.
Oof.
So,
Do you know what though? Good.
Yeah, good.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that, because I think quite a lot of people would probably have rolled over at the counterclaim point and maybe just gone, well, do you know what, mate? You drop that and I'll drop that.
That's exactly
What he was hoping for.
Yeah.
But a lot of people would have done that, Jay. But good for you for not doing that, because it also sets an example for others.
Yeah.
You know, because again, you don't know how far those things go if it's a conversation in a pub or it's something that goes online. Oh, well, do you know what? This is what I did to get out of paying. You know what I mean?
Well, the thing is so I worked for that guy's business partner. I decorated his old house. I decorated some other people that he was friends with, and he used to recommend me to people. I've never worked for them people again. I did get asked to go and price one of his friends' jobs, and it was the same. Some of the tradesmen that had worked on that guy's house were doing this other house, and they'd all said how unreasonable he was, and they all said what a knob he was. And but they're friends with him as well, so I don't want to cause trouble, but
Yeah.
it's the truth. So I ended up turning the job down and said, no, I'm too busy. Just because I didn't want to work for another associate. I didn't want to work for a friend because
you'd always have that thing in your head. Are they
it's
going to
almost
try
a
and
trigger, mate.
Yeah.
It's like he was actually the best friend of this guy, and I was like, look, at the end of the day, your best mates tried to mug me off. So unfortunately, he's mugged you off now because I'm not going to work for you either. So he lost out, and he had to hire another painter and decorator, and wasn't satisfied with their work. And
To be honest with you, Jay, I'd be thinking the same. If I were in that position, I would not want to work for the best mate, because I'd be thinking, well, the best mate's just going to try and have me over
through
to
him,
get his mate's money back, you know?
Yeah.
Or even that they could be working in, you know, get a bit conspiracy, but have they planned this? Do you know what I mean?
This is kind
All
of, yeah, and that was another thing. So it kind of sends you into a spiral of overthinking, and you do, but you then have to try and. It's taught me a good lesson going forward to try and find these like these signs. You got to find these red flags. All I'm trying to do is go and earn a living. Like I'm
That's
just
it,
trying to
mate,
put
isn't
food
it?
on the
Yeah, but
table.
it's important to remember that. It's like we're just there to try and do a job as a tradesperson.
Yeah.
Go in, do what we're paid for, get paid on time, keep the customer happy, run a good business, and go home and support your family, because that's what we all do it for.
I mean, so I've been doing it 8-9 years now, and that's the first time I've ever experienced anything like it. And it's stressful. I wouldn't want to go through it again. I'll be honest with you. It's stressful, as you said earlier in our conversation. A message pops up. Oh, what's that? Or you receive a letter from a solicitor, and it's 13, 14 pages, and then I'm sitting down on my lunch break on a job I'm now working on 2 years later, having to read a document, and it's like it's grief that you don't need.
100%.
But I just hope he's learned his lesson, because word spreads. He would have told people not to use me, I'm sure he would have done. And I didn't really tell anyone about what I was going through.
Other than the hundreds of thousands of podcasts it's going to go out
Yes.
to, Jay. That's what this revenge mission.
No, mate, I'm not interested in revenge. All I wanted was my money, mate. That's all I wanted.
I'm really glad you took it that far, mate, honestly, on a personal level. Because I
Yeah.
think those kind of things need to be illustrated.
I think it all, I look back at my whole life as such with my golf, with it's all trust in myself. Like I preferred golf to football because I used to get really frustrated with winning a football game if I felt like I'd played badly.
Yeah.
Same as if I'd get frustrated if I felt like I'd played well when we lost. So I quite like, hence I like to run my own business. I like to be the one kind of in control of my own.
It's all on you.
Yeah. So I trust myself and I know my value and I know I do a good job. So I was like, I don't have any doubts of the work that I produce. So get a snagging company to come, and I've worked on 2, 3, £4 million houses where people have, it's been a new build and they've had snagging companies come and view the job and I've never had a snag. I did one about 3 years ago before this guy's house. Like I hadn't.
The ironic thing is, for anyone, again, that's struggling with this kind of thing, there are things out there called industry standards that are your legal binding standards that you're meant to work to.
Yep.
And they're actually quite generous, tolerant, really.
Well, I'd say I'm probably a bit fussy myself, and I'm probably a bit too hard on myself when you read the industry standards.
Exactly. But if it come to a legal standpoint, as long as you satisfy the criteria of those industry standards, you're in the right.
100%.
And admittedly, as you said, we work above those levels.
Yep.
Because I think in a decorating perspective, isn't it, if a defect isn't visible from, is it 2 meters in natural lighting?
Correct.
So when you have customers going along with inspection lights, torches, and I've had it myself, like I kid you not, faces 6 inches from the wall, that is not acceptable.
No.
If you can stand back 2 meters, and that doesn't, when they say natural light, because I've had situations with customers where you've decorated a wall, it all looks perfect, then they have downlight installed. And then all of a sudden the plaster looks like the sea, and it catches all the ripples. And I've rectified things and done stuff just because I want the job to look right.
Yeah, of course.
However, if it was a legal standpoint, you would be within your legal rights to stand back and go,
not my problem.
Industry standards. Yeah.
So, do you think, I think although we have, with the tools that we use that we spoke about, do you think that we're making the trade harder for ourselves? Or do we think that tradesmen before us think they can get away with not doing as good of a job because they know that the painter's going to come along with his machine sander and make it look good?
Possibly. I think, industry standards, maybe they need to be reevaluated. I think maybe one of the problems, if I was to zoom out on it, is I now consider standard specification on a decorating room to go in and machines and all the walls.
Yeah,
I consider that normal. I don't charge any extra.
Yeah,
that's what I do as like day to day. And that certainly wasn't the case. I think my dustless sanding, my own setup, I've had for maybe 6 or 7 years. Prior to that, it was literally pole sander, and things like that. And you would, thinking backwards, it seems like so long ago now, but you would look at a wall, and I remember telling customers, if you want that improved upon, you got to have it reskimmed.
Yeah, totally right.
Because there was no facility to machine sand. So I think maybe the acceptance of it as normal is maybe shooting us in the foot a little.
Yeah.
Because with a machine sander, I find that it takes out so many imperfections that it then the small ones that are left become glaringly obvious, and then you get the customer's expectations. It's like, well, that wall is perfect except for that little bit. And then I look at it and I go, but it's took me 2 days to get it to that. And you're focused on that little bit rather than looking at it and going, wow. Like,
and you think, I wish I'd have just left the ripple on the wall.
Yeah, exactly.
Might as well have left the trowel marks or the stops.
You're almost better off
leaving it
with a rough wall, and then they won't notice anything.
Painted with a heavy stipple.
Yeah, it's mad. So I don't know the answer, Jay, really. I think maybe industry standards need reevaluating. Maybe it's our own fault for marketing ourselves the way that we do and not selling it as like a bespoke service almost to deep sand walls? Should that be a trade of its own? Not a trade of its own, but a part of almost like a service of its own?
Well, it's not by by industry standard, it's not standard
No,
practice to
it's not
go in and
required.
machine
No,
sand. And
no.
part of the reason, similar time to you, about 6-7 years ago, I bought these machines because I thought, well, I can provide a much better finish for the client. So you're going to target the richer client because they want something of a better standard, but still within a reasonable scope. Like I'm not going to be able to make your plastered wall look like a car.
No.
You could, I suppose, but do you want me spending a week on a
On a
standard
normal room.
4 meter
Yeah.
by 2.4 high wall? Um, it's very difficult, but I keep doing what I do, and you just have to. Unfortunately, you come across these people, and they teach you a lesson.
Yeah.
And I have learned a lot from it. So I no longer work for friends. I try and avoid it. No,
I
but
think
it does
we've
take a
just got to
toll.
adapt, mate, haven't
Yeah.
we? Like we were saying about the paints are adapting, the procedures are adapting, and probably expectations are adapting equally as
Yeah.
well. But within that, we need to, as a tradesperson, if those expectations are adapting, that's okay. But we just have to make sure we know our value and what the value of those expectations is.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that we're charging accordingly to meet the expectations. And if everybody in the industry then does that, then it raises the bar as a whole. Because the interesting thing is, people won't bat an eyelid at a plumber or a sparky going, well, I'm on 350 a day, 400 a day.
Yeah.
Won't even bat an eyelid. You try saying those figures as a decorator.
Well, it's not going to happen, is it?
No, it's
going
not.
to
Not
happen.
anytime soon.
Is that risk? That's purely risk, is it? Or is that the qualification side of things?
I guess, yeah, they'd argue it. There's risk, qualification, working with gas, working with power. You've got all the liabilities, tool set, skill set. I don't know.
Realistically, if you spill a bit of paint, it's not going to cause death, is it? Whereas
True, yeah.
a dodgy gas joint or
Don't get
a dodgy
emergency.
socket,
Yeah.
or there's no real that is a dangerous trade as such. I wouldn't go.
Even without the danger, a good mate of mine's a bathroom fitter, and I was talking to him, and he talking about anxiety. He struggles with that in terms of if he finishes a bathroom and then goes on holiday, he says he hates it because then for that first couple of weeks of a customer using the new bathroom and he's not
joint's
there,
leaking,
yeah, and you get a phone call and there's water pouring through the ceiling. So you imagine that kind of anxiety.
Yeah,
although he's again OCD, and no doubt has probably never had an issue.
Yeah.
The worry, because it's not always their work either. It could be that a joint fails or
a dodgy joint,
a seal splits or anything.
See, who's liable there?
I don't know. Thankfully, we don't have to deal with that, do we?
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true, but we have to. That's the same with the wallpapers again, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
You need to hang a nice wall.
Well, the wallpapers cover themselves, don't they? Because you look on the instruction and it's no cost will be incurred beyond 2 drops.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They say that you should, in theory, hang 2 drops or a roll and then leave it and come back the next day.
What, for a 4-drop feature wall?
Yeah, exactly.
Or 5-drop feature
exactly. The thing is, Jay, can you imagine saying to a customer, well, all right, you want your feature wall done? I'm going to come on Monday, put 2 drops up. I've got to charge you 2 days because I've got to come out twice. They're like, what? You're like, well, I've got 3 rolls of paper to put up.
I actually hung one. We're going off piece there, but I actually hung one from a what I would class as a luxury brand, and I pulled the client in the room before I even started hanging it, and I said, look, just making you aware, this pattern will not 100% match. And she said, why, are you not confident? And I was like, no, that's the way the paper is. So hanging instructions, there it was. Paper may not match 100%.
Really?
Yeah, not going to name it because it's all hand printed.
Wow.
So it may not match perfectly. So I made her aware but I had this experience because I'd hung it before and I wasn't aware. And there was me trying to make sure it was, and it's impossible to match perfectly. And so I just have to try and get it good at eye line first, then work up, work down. But there was areas of the pattern that probably was 5-6 mil out.
That's a lot.
That's quite a lot over a 2.4 meter drop. But
I think the worst thing I've seen, again with a high-end paper, um, was that they'd obviously throughout cutting and milling the paper, they'd run out of paper and then they'd just spliced it together central. So I was cutting off the roll,
Yeah,
and I was about, I don't know, it was like 7 roll room, and this was like roll 5,
yeah,
all the same batches. I'm cutting it, and I might cut 2 rolls and then paste and hang 2 rolls,
yeah,
and I'd got this roll out, and I pulled it out, and there was just this big spliced seam. Well, I'd say spliced, it wasn't spliced, it was overlapped seam across the middle of the paper, and I've looked and gone, no, surely not. Flipped it over, and exactly
there it
what it
was.
was. Rung them up, and they went, "Oh
Have
yeah,
you?
we do that occasionally." I'm like, "What?" And it would have just been a join that would have gone straight across the middle. Um, didn't have enough paper because it was a designer paper
Oh,
ordered to measure, so we needed another roll. And they were like, "Well, if it's going to be an issue, we don't mind sending you another roll." Like, if it's going to be an issue, they're like, "Well, we do that when we run out of paper." Like, no, shut up. No, you
yeah.
don't.
You're not going to see that in the first 2 drops that you've put up.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
It's
wow.
insane. So there
Unbelievable.
are some faults that do pop up.
That the painter can't get
Yeah.
over.
Oh, actually, another one. Again, this decorators will be interested. The rest of you will apologise. I had a paper, £400 a roll, supplied by a designer,
Yeah.
and it was a foil metallic, extra wide. Trying best how to describe the pattern. It was almost like a textured, like a material texture,
Yeah.
but there was like a metallic foil built into the background of this stuff. And I'd got 2 pasteboards set up because of the width of it. I
Yeah.
was cutting, measuring, and pasting it. And I put the first drop on, and I could see these lines in the paper. And I thought, that ain't right.
Mm.
I looked at the board, and they weren't visible. And then I clocked when I smoothed out the paper. There were these little bits of foil on the floor. And what had happened was where you folded the paper after paste, because it was paste to paper, not
Yeah.
paste to wall, so
Yeah.
you couldn't paste the wall.
No.
Where you folded the paper, the foil come off. It like split and come off. So I rung the designer, sent pictures, and she rung the supplier, and the supplier went, "Oh yeah, we're aware of the fault. Some people don't mind it, but if you're going to continue to hang it, try not to fold the paper."
Well, how's it
And I
going to
was like,
soak?
"Well, how exactly?" And this stuff had a 15-minute soak time,
Wow.
really thick paper. And again, I said to the designer, I was like, "What do you want me to do?" Because every one I put up, and I can't not fold it on
No, of
itself.
course you can't.
Not only
It's
that, even if you were
procedure.
to paste it and leave it to soak open, by the time you try
Dries.
and put it on the wall, it does dry,
Yeah.
but trying to put it on the wall, you're not going to do it without folding the paper
No.
somewhere.
No, of course not. No.
And that was at 400 quid a roll. They ended up having to resupply. They said it was a dodgy batch. But again, they tried to say, they were aware of it straight away. They
They
were
were
like,
just
"Oh, yeah, we know."
winging it.
At 400 quid a roll. And then it was like, "Well, do you want us to resupply?" I'm like, "Do you think?" you know?
And we're worrying about leaving, like, I don't know, we don't even try not to leave anything, but
Yeah.
we're getting customers with a tiny imperfection or
Yeah.
a little bit of a hair's come out of a roller or
They wing it. Yeah, it's mad.
Unbelievable.
We have gone off piste on decorators. This is a
Well,
problem
maybe keep
talking
doing
to
it.
decorators. We start getting trade orientated.
Yeah.
But let's go back, mate. And obviously the thing that you touched on, and we'll go and start at that point. So your daughter.
Yeah.
At 32 weeks, you went for a scan. Was that a routine scan, or was that a scan because
That was a scan because we had MRIs.
what was the start point of it though, Jay?
The
Because that's
start
not, you
point,
don't normally have an MRI there.
no. So went through the 12-week scan, 20-week scan, and then first child. So we went for a 4D scan privately. One Sunday morning, and the lady scanning, so my little girl had a hand on her face, so she's concentrating around the face, waiting for the hand to drop to try and get the face on like 4D image. And then all of a sudden she said, "Have you got your notes?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Found a problem." And then she just froze for a couple of minutes. And like my missus is burst into tears, and like I'm welling up, and handed the notes over, and we said, like, I got a little angry at the time because I was like, "Look, you can't. What's happened? Like, you can't tell us that and not say nothing. Like, what's the wrong? Oh, I don't really know. She said, I've never really seen it before, but she highlighted an area. She said, there's an area around here and blah, blah, blah. And I said, right, Dan, like my missus, I said, right, we're going. I said, can I have the notes back? And I got up and walked out. And it was a bit of a blur, but it was like, you can't tell me there's a problem and you don't like. I feel bad now because she was bang on the money, and fortunately, my mum works on midwifery at Southend Hospital, so we came home and we were both in bits. And my mum made some phone calls. She calls it a perk of the job, and spoke to a sonographer, so someone that trains scanning. And she said, who have you had? And we told them the name. And she said, oh, she's a very, very good scanner. I was like, oh, I felt terrible. She said, look, come up. So the next day we were seen by the specialist at Southend Hospital, a guy called Dr. Singh. Geezer's incredible. The next day, fetal medicine. So he's scanning away, and then he finds what he described at the time as a cystic hygroma. And his way of explaining it was it's like a fluid-filled sac around the jawline that can be drained once like born and bits and pieces. So we didn't think too much of it. They did tell us to try and avoid Google if we could, which obviously
First thing you do then,
we couldn't not. So we came home and had a little look into a few bits and pieces and done some research and saw some horror stories. But he had transferred us to, we had King's College Hospital, which is a specialist hospital in London. That was scheduled in later on. So at that point, we would have been around, we was just approaching Christmas, so it would have been around the 30 to 31 week mark. And that was where they scanned and said it could be a cancerous tumour. That was where that came out. Mate, I can't really tell you. I don't know how I felt, to be honest. I've never felt anything like it. I've never had some of the thoughts that I had. Never experienced them before. And then they transferred us to St Thomas Hospital, where they performed the MRI scan through the womb, which is incredible. And it was literally, it must have been a week or 2 weeks before Christmas. It was around that sort of time. It's all a little bit blurry, I'll be honest. We got the news that it wasn't a cancerous tumour, and that it was actually a lymphatic malformation, otherwise known as a cystic hygroma, which is what Dr. Singh said back at 24 weeks. Like, incredible. So then it was just a case of, I was trying to manage my own expectations. So I'd looked into it and I'd looked at pictures and stuff on Google and some of the poor people that have experienced the worst scenarios of the same abnormality. Like,
so just to ask a few questions, mate, because it'll be, again, I'm putting myself, first of all, I'm ignorant to it. I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
And people listening will be in the same position.
Yeah.
Is that an internal growth or an external growth?
So it occurs early on in pregnancy. So a lymph gland doesn't form properly early on in pregnancy. So it's like, it's not just one cyst or one fluid-filled sac. It's a combination of, you've got lymph fluid, you've got veins, you've got vessels, you've got tissues. It's just, it's kind of like an amalgam of, it's just loads of stuff there. But it comes on the inside of her mouth too, and it's also on the outside. So she's got like a bigger cheek. But we had her at St Thomas. Her date of birth's 4321. It's a pretty cool birthday, yeah. So we were induced. My missus was induced. she was induced so that we were definitely at St Thomas Hospital because we had
Yeah.
all specialist intervention
Ready to
team
go.
just in case, because they couldn't tell whether it was going to block the airways or not. So all the specialists were there. So if she was born and didn't take the first breath, she was straight in surgery to be operated on.
The anxiety, though, mate. I mean, the
Mate,
worry must have been off the charts.
yeah. Didn't really. I felt a bit bad, really, for my missus because she didn't really get to enjoy pregnancy, which.
So I've had a conversation with a chap called Mark Williams a few episodes back, and Mark is a expert and campaigner on male postnatal depression
Right.
and birth trauma PTSD.
Yeah.
And a lot of what you're saying, it kind of linked with a conversation I had with him, and it's that thing, isn't it? The romanticism of childbirth and
Yeah.
pregnancy,
Yeah.
and it's all meant to be this happy, fluffy, dancing bunnies
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
situation,
Yeah.
and all too often it isn't.
Yeah. It's it really. I think it makes you realise how precious life is. And it's certainly changed my whole perception of life in a way, because I used to get the ump, and I still do actually, if I hit a bad golf shot. And I look at it and I think, really? Like, how does that matter? Like, in the grand scheme of things, it's a golf shot. It's not life or death. It's
Yeah,
like, and I just, mate, the things that I felt at the time, and the things that were going through my head, and I was adamant that if that didn't work out, I knew what I was going to do. And it's a bit naughty, really, to think
really.
I'd never experienced anything like that.
So when you say that, mate, I mean, to delve into that, when you say if things didn't work out, you knew what you were going to do.
I didn't want to be here, mate.
If anything had gone wrong, that was where you were thinking.
Yeah, that was me done, mate. I was like, couldn't cope.
Yeah,
Like, that would have been me. We'd done everything. Like, my little girl's bedroom was done, and we'd had name and everything. We had a name set, and like, that was what I wanted. Like, and that was, I just couldn't have. I couldn't have gone through it, I don't think.
did you talk to anyone at the time?
Nah.
No.
I didn't feel like I could, I didn't want to. I was brave in it, and I was just continuing on, and I was going through all the stuff with the court stuff and everything with that helmet as well. So I was just dealing with it because, like, I had to be there and I had to be strong for my missus and stuff, and you just try to bury it. But I just used to go for drives in my car, or there's a couple of songs that I still struggle to listen to today, where I'd just go somewhere and I'd park up somewhere out the way. I mean, people don't even know this now. This is the first and I'd just listen to there's a couple of songs, and that'd just be me, and I'd just have my little moment for an hour or so, and hopefully try and help myself, kind of thing. But the emotion, what I will say, when she was born, like, I don't know, it just felt like everything come out. When I first heard my little girl scream, I've got the video on my phone of when she come out, and not face on, but the first, and you can hear me, and I'm just like, I'm a mess, mate.
Mate, the relief must have been so big.
Unbelievable. Never experienced anything like that.
There's probably not many people that have been in that situation, mate, but I'm sat here thinking as you're talking, and to think that a lot of people go through their kids being ill, and that's horrific. But there's kind of like an immediate action there. So if your kid's ill, you can go straight to the doctor, straight to the hospital, get the process going. But you were like told that your daughter might be ill or seriously ill, and then you had 8 weeks to wait to find out.
Yeah.
Like, that side of it, mate, is horrific.
Well, it took away. I was probably. So again, trying to manage my expectations, I was speaking to the specialists, and I get it. I'm not saying. I mean, King's College, they were giving us. It turns out they were giving us the worst case scenario, but to hear obviously the cancerous tumor things, and they kind of set us up for that. And fortunately, that wasn't the case. But I would speak to the specialist once we knew what it was, and I was just trying to, for my own expectation, gauge what I was going to find or what we was expecting, because you can't see on a scan what my little girl was going to look like as such. And some of the pictures, mate, I'll show you after on Google of poor kids that have got some severe cases, and I was like, and the specialist said to me, look, it could look like she's got two heads. It could look like it's like bigger than an orange on the side of her face. And when I first looked, I was scared of first
to
looking
look,
at
yeah.
my daughter that's just been born, and I didn't want to look at first. And I look back now and I think it's a bit vain and a bit terrible of
No,
me.
I don't
Like,
think so, mate. I don't think so, because in that circumstance, I mean, I know where my mind would go. You'd be projecting into the future of your child's quality of life,
yeah,
and you're going to be hoping for the best
yeah,
and fearing the worst. And I
yeah.
think to be scared initially, man, that's natural.
Yeah, so we had them conversations along the way at King's when we was there. We had to ask them questions, whether she'd be able to eat properly, whether she'd be able to speak properly, and they couldn't give us no. There was a risk of all of that.
So what's the prognosis with it then, Jay? Because I'm like, is it something that requires an operation, or is it something that once your daughter's born, that's how she is, and there's
So at the start, once she was born, we was told we had to monitor it because it could change in size pretty rapidly. So within the first 2 or 3 weeks of her being born, it could have doubled, tripled. It could reduce or whatever. So we used to have to watch her sleep just in case. Like, is she breathing?
Really?
We used to lay her on one side because we felt if we laid her on one side, if there's fluid there, it will drain away.
Oh Christ! So
and we used to notice a difference. We used to notice a difference. So if she slept and laid on one side of her face, it would get smaller, and if she laid on one side, it seemed like it got bigger. It was really strange. Whether it was our brains
the fear of it suddenly getting bigger when she's asleep and affecting her breathing.
That was a worry. Yeah, because it went on the inside as well. But yeah, there's so many things that I'm scared of still. She's had 6 operations already. So she's had sclerophy, which is like injections into the area, which supposedly is going to irritate the fluid-filled cysts, because there could be 1,000 different little ones. And then hopefully that will agitate and scar from the inside out and stop.
Okay.
And then hopefully reduce the size. But I'm not sure whether we've had much success with them. But earlier on this week, we had our first consult. My missus went. Unfortunately, I had to go to Crown Paint's golf day.
Had to go.
I didn't want to let people down.
Did they know you were a ringer?
What's that?
Did they know you were a ringer for the golf?
Well, yeah, that was kind of why I was asked to go. It was a 15-minute consultation on Thursday. My missus had to go, and my little girl, to Great Ormond Street. So we've now been transferred to them. So we're actually under a specialist that in the past has separated Siamese top of the head twins. So he's a famous person, capable of doing some. So we're hoping we're under his guidance now. So in his hands, really. So I was on a FaceTime meeting, so I was actually there.
So you're still at this point unsure as to
there's no cure. There's no cure for it. There's no known cure. There's no reason for it.
Because again, my ignorance speaking here, but I hear the word cyst and I think the possibility of removal. Is that not?
Yes. So there is an option to cut surgery,
right,
and try and remove. There is a risk then with that because you've got a main nerve that runs along your jawline, and then you have nerves branching off that across your face, which control your smell, your nose, your mouth. That nerve will get damaged when it's obviously open. So depending on whether it repairs properly, she could lose the feeling that side of her face with surgery. Right. So there's a new way they're doing the injections. It's been around for the last, I think, a year or so. So it's called electrosclerophy. So they actually put loads of mini needles in and somehow put electrolysis through, which somehow does something so that the injection should be more effective with not as harsh a dose, because the stuff is quite harsh, depending on what drug they use. So we're in the best hands. You just got to go with the flow. It's out of my control. It's difficult to deal with now when we're out and about. If you go to a zoo or people staring and looking, and it does me in, I'll be honest. It's not nice. I wish I could just have it myself. Like, just give it to me. Take it away from my little girl, you know?
Yeah.
But she's unbelievable, mate. Like, she's so full of character. She's unbelievable. It's not affected her eating. It's not affected her speech. She has literally come out probably the best case scenario of anyone I've ever looked into.
Oh, okay.
In terms of the lymphatic, when I Googled it. And we're so lucky, really, to have what we've got. So, yeah, mate, it's all good news in the end, really.
That's good,
although
mate. That's good.
I'm
glad.
been through a lot. And then we're pregnant again.
Well, mate, massive congratulations on that.
Thank you. Again, that's difficult. That's been hard because that's triggered me again a little, in a way where people can normally wait till 12 weeks and then announce that they're having a baby. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to wait till 20, 22, like make sure everything's all right. And fortunately, touch wood, everything's good.
I think it's natural, Jay. It's natural, and you should be okay to talk about that as well.
Yeah,
because you're gonna.
I never see it as, the thing is that I look at some other people, the stories that we see on here, and as Gary, I know Gary, and you look at some of the things that other people have been through, and you think, I'm not worthy of speaking. But everything,
100% you are.
Yeah, everyone goes through different things, and
just your concerns as a father, mate. It's a worthy topic. Again, I think it should be talked about more. I think it's, as a father, because like it's natural instinct. I've got 2 kids myself. You want to be protective, and there are certain circumstances where you can't be protective.
It's out of your control, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, nothing to the extent of what you had, but I remember when when my daughter was born. So my ex-partner, through pregnancy, developed a blood condition where like her blood stopped clotting.
Right.
So she was, and essentially, I'll shorten the story, there was a risk that condition would be passed to my daughter on birth.
Right.
And the risk with that is that if she experienced any trauma or bleeding, she could have bled out. Ugh. So we were told all this. Again, they tell you that like the worst case scenario. And what they said was that as soon as my daughter was born, they would take a piece of the umbilical cord and test it, and we'd find out within hours whether my daughter, worst case, needed a blood transfusion.
Yeah.
So a similar sort of thing where this moment that's meant to be magical. And the hospital where my daughter, they forgot. So my daughter was born, they forgot to test the umbilical cord. So with all the chaos of a birth, you know, it was like afterwards, and I think I had my daughter, and I remember saying to the midwife, like, when will we find out about the test? What test? I was like, the blood test, because of the, I'll have to check your notes. Yeah, we forgot. So then my daughter had to have blood taken from her, rather than, so it was more traumatic from her. And even then, mate, I remember sat there thinking, I don't want you to hurt my daughter. She's just born, and you'll get to take blood.
Mate, I remember that so well.
And there's that protective,
I can't even watch it. I can't even.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
I had like a very small taste, and you know, my daughter did. She was fine. Her blood was fine, and everything was good. But those worries, mate, you're just so helpless, aren't you?
Yeah, especially, that's the thing. I mean, going completely away from it now, like just any man that goes and experiences labour, the feeling of worthlessness,
helpless, mate,
whilst you're doing it. Like Danielle, she'll watch this and she'll laugh, because I came away and we were talking about the pain of my hands because I was massaging her back so much. And obviously she's just pushed the baby out. But mate, I just remember, like, what can I do? How can I help? And you just feel like felt worthless,
Yeah.
literally helpless. And I want to help where I
It,
can,
mate,
and
it's hard.
it's
And
so difficult.
it's not taking anything away from women. Women do the hard work. We know that.
Yeah,
But from a man's perspective,
we want
from a
to be the
dad's
one. Yeah,
perspective, one, you want to protect your
yeah,
partner.
yeah,
Two, you want to protect the child. And like you said, quite rightly, we're clueless. We're sat there going, what do I do? How can I help?
yeah,
A lot of the time you can't. You can't help. You just got to be there to watch, and to watch your partner in pain, and then to have any concerns about the baby, mate. It's horrible. It really is.
yes.
I remember with both of my kids coming out and going, there was nothing magical about that. Like,
Well, yeah. I mean, Mayla's so through giving birth, her heart rate was going like 185,
mm,
40. It was literally really up and down. And I remember thinking like, oh, is this part of it? Is this because of it? Like at the time, you know what it's like. You just kind of your adrenaline's taken over, and you don't
yeah.
really know what to think or what to do. But it turned out she had the cord wrapped around her neck as she come out,
Oh,
which is quite common actually. It happens a
yeah.
lot. And the way that the nurses at the time or the midwives deal with it there and then, they just go, "Oh, look, there's a cord. Oh, we'll just unwrap that. Oh,
Yeah, that's
welcome
it.
to the world." And it's like, wow. And mate, I will never ever forget that first cry that you hear. And
Mm,
it's like, and now I sit on the sofa and my little girl Mayla, she goes, "Daddy, where's that video when I was born?" And we sit and watch it because I've got a
mm.
video. So, and then now she's getting excited. She's going to have a little brother.
Oh, you know what you're having.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think for all of our struggles, I feel like life's given me one back because of
Mm.
I want a boy
Well,
for
mate,
multiple
yeah,
reasons.
I'm
And
fortunate there. I've got a boy and a girl.
yeah,
But massive congratulations to you and your partner, and
thank you,
obviously
mate.
best wishes for the upcoming birth.
Yeah,
I'm sure it'll all go well.
hopefully, mate. So yeah, it's exciting. I was actually laying in bed last night with my little girl. Took her to bed and had a little
Mm,
cuddle, and just mate, what a beautiful little girl. I know she's mine, but we were laying in bed last night. She's going, "Daddy, when you're in your bedroom downstairs, and if I hear my brother, I'm gonna go and help him, and I'm gonna bring him in with me." And like,
oh,
she's
bless
so
her.
sweet. I
How
mean,
old's your daughter now?
she's 3, so she's
Right.
3 in a couple of months. So um, yeah, she was 3 in March. So she's gonna be 3.5 when her little brother's due. So
Mm,
mate, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully we can enjoy the rest of this pregnancy. Everything's been good
mm,
till now, and we will have a bit more, and they've taken a bit more time into looking around things. And at
mm.
the last scan, we asked like, right, we need to check around the neck. Can you check? There's no reason for it. It's just a complete
It's
one of them things.
perfectly reasonable anxiety, though, mate.
Yeah,
You know, when you've gone through that trauma and the worry and concern first time round, you're bound to be. Both of you are bound to be worried.
yeah,
You know, it's perfectly natural, and as long as you can talk about it,
yeah.
then
It's
that's
slowly
going to
coming
help.
out of me, mate. I'm watching your
Mm.
podcast and I'm seeing other people. Oh, look, other people are talking about things they've struggled with, and you don't just have to button it up, and you
Do you
can
know what
talk
though,
to
Jay?
people. And
That's nail on head, mate. That's exactly what I'm hoping the podcast does. And again, I said to you before, massive thanks to you coming in and talking, and huge credit to everyone that's come in before Jay to talk, because every single one of my guests are blazing that trail of saying, yeah, you know what, I'll sit down and I'll
mm,
talk. And like you've said, you've listened to other people do it,
yeah,
and I think
everyone's going through something, mate.
yeah, it's very rare, mate. I mean, look, life's a beautiful thing, but it can also be really hard.
Yeah, it's horrible, really.
And certainly, once you get to my years, and I'm touching 40 this year, I don't think there's many 40-odd-year-old, 30-year-old people that haven't been through something,
Yeah,
because life consists of death.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
everyone's going to go through bereavement. Everyone's going to go through various things in life. It's tough.
Yeah,
It's
it's
tough.
mate, it's a cruel world, isn't it? It's a cruel
Can
world.
be, it can be, but a lot of the time, the biggest pressures are the pressures we put on ourselves,
Yeah,
and people bottling things up. And in fact, at this point, mate, I've forgotten to ask this to the last half a dozen guests that have come on, but with construction, obviously, there's this glaring crisis when it comes to mental health and the amount of men that are sadly taking their own lives. And I'll keep talking about the numbers because that is what brings it to reality for people. But on average at the moment, there's 2 tradespeople a day, a working day. So 10 people a week are taking their own life in the
Wow.
UK construction industry. And that's just one of the figures, mate. It's the worst industry to work in for men that take their own life, worst industry in the UK. What are your thoughts on why that is?
Um, what would I say that?
There's no right or wrong answer to it.
I'll say things that worry me: insecurity,
Mm,
worries about work, financial worries, dealing with expectations of people. A lot of the time, people are working alone, so you haven't really got anyone to talk to. I mean, I know you've got podcasts, listen to music and stuff. Yeah, I'd say they're the things that would worry me, that do worry me. Oh, earning the money, or is work going to dry up? You're 100 miles an hour a lot of the time, running around and chasing products, quotes like we've discussed earlier. So there's quite a few things I think
mm,
that all add up, and it's
yeah.
just all pressure, especially with the way of the world at the moment.
Mm,
Everything's costing more. So, I mean, from my perspective, like, I'm the man of the house. I've got a house and a family to provide for. It's a lot of weight on your shoulders,
mm,
I feel. But I'll do whatever I have to float. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to sink. I'm going to swim. Like, I'm going to keep
mm,
going. I'll do what I have to make it work for my family. Got an extra plate to fill now. Well, in a while I will have. So it's difficult, mate. It is very difficult. And
mm,
sometimes I just wish that people that use tradesmen would understand. Like, they look and say, "Oh, well, yeah, we're really busy. We're really busy." They don't realise we got 5 or 6 people potentially chasing us at a time. Like, when are you going to start my job, or when can you come and look? And it just all gets a little bit too much. And
mm,
I know myself. I get to the point where I'm like, oh, I hope they're not thinking bad of me, or I don't want to do this, and I'm worrying about what they're
mm,
thinking. And eventually, I just go right, and I just throw my phone to the side, and I go, I don't want to look at it. I need some of my time now.
mm. It's
So
worth
there's,
saying, mate, actually. I think most people that run their own business, we all do care. We
yeah,
do care what you think about us. We care what you think about the business because that's how we run a business.
yep,
So if a tradesperson doesn't get back to you, it's not because they don't care. Generally, it is possibly because they're snowed under. They could have personal things going on,
yep,
all these things. There does seem to be a strange disconnect at times with customers that kind of treat you as a business the same way they'd treat like somebody revving the motorbike out there. Treat you the same way that they'd treat like a big high street store,
yeah,
like a big corporation, like you pick it Tesco's. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
There's that same emotional detachment of like, well, you as an organisation, you as JB Painter and
yeah,
Decorator,
yeah, yeah,
that's an organisation.
yeah.
But it's key to remember
It's
that
just
you're a
me. Yeah,
person.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that, like you say, you do care. You do care what people think. You do care what the clients think, and their opinion matters. But just we've got the Hell's Angels pulling up out here. I don't know whether, yeah. So if you're watching, you'll understand. But if you're listening, it sounds like we've just had a motorbike club go past the outside of the podcast. So apologies for the background noise
Yeah,
if the software don't take it out. So I've done this a few times, Jay, where
yeah.
I've gone, yeah, can you hear that? And then I play it back and the
You can't.
software's deleted
Yeah,
it. It's
that's
just
because you've got
silence.
this quality equipment, mate. It's really good.
That's it, yeah.
Setup's
But
great.
occasionally that happens. Thankfully, they've now gone.
But no, yeah, it's like you say, we're not a huge corporation where I've got somebody picking up a phone for me, or I've got
Mm,
someone coming to view.
literally doing it
Literally,
all ourselves.
everything is on me. I'm the
Mm,
one that's coming to view your job. I'm the one that's replying to your message about what I try and avoid colours or talking about colours. But if people ask, I'll try and help and advise, or I'll get colours testers and bits and pieces. I'm the one that's getting them. I'm the one that's collecting my materials. I'm the one that's chasing payments,
mm,
even with non-payers. Everything is me.
yeah.
Not let alone, I haven't done a lot on social media for the last few weeks because I've been a little bit down in the dumps myself. But um, there's a lot that goes in. So if
So
I don't
much, man.
reply to a
Yeah,
message and you just think, oh, please, just leave me. I just want to curl up and just
yeah.
leave me alone. Like,
There's ways to go about it, mate, isn't there? I mean, me personally, sometimes I do need a bit of chasing. Sometimes I do need a
yeah,
little kick up the arse.
yeah,
But there's ways of doing it.
yeah,
You know, like, all right, Russ, sorry to bother you, mate. Have you had a chance to do that quote?
yeah,
I'm okay with that.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But, you know, you get the other end of it of like, I've been waiting 12 hours now and the quote still isn't here.
Yeah.
Like, are you interested in the work or not?
Yeah.
Not anymore.
The trouble is, I mean, how many messages do you send to a tradesman before realizing that they're not interested? Or if, see, I find it quite difficult. I don't want to offend people, but I've recently had a message about, I had a phone call about a job, got recommended for someone. I just want the wallpaper hung in my hall stairs and landing. We're going to do everything else ourselves.
Oh, there's your alarm bells. Yeah.
Red flag. There's a couple of them. Obviously, I then appropriate questions. Oh, so what's happening around the cork underneath the ceiling line or above the skirting or blah, 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 or if it's not been sanded, it's going to be rough when I cut my paper. I try and then he just come out with more red flags. And I was like, at what point am I rude in saying I'm ever so sorry, not interested? Because I'm interested in work, but I'm a bit
Yeah.
wary.
As I say, mate, I think sometimes you have to bite the bullet. And my favourite phrase, you're welcome to use it, is I am respectfully withdrawing my interest in the work or the job or the contract, whatever it might be. You know, if people want me to expand upon it, I will. And I'll just be, you know, unfortunately, it's not really the kind of work we do.
Yeah.
And that's it. People can take that and do what they want with it, as long as you're respectful. You know, we don't have to do everybody's work.
No.
You know,
No.
and that's one of those things. I guess it's that comfort in saying no. There's always that devil on your shoulder saying you're self-employed, you have to do everything, you have to
Yeah.
say yes to everyone, you have
Yeah.
to take on every job. Realistically, we can't.
No.
So
one door closes, another one opens, as
absolutely, mate. But yeah, you summed up what I asked you well. Everything you said there is relevant, and I've been asking a lot of people just because everyone's got a slightly different view on it. There's no wrong answer. That
What
what's
seems to
making
be
up the
the
problem.
most?
I would say if I had to summarise, working in isolation is a big one. Financial pressures is another big one. I think after talking to a lot of my guests, what I'm coming to my own conclusion on is it's not one thing. It tends to be it's like a little tornado of chaos almost.
Yeah.
So a little bit like yourself, to use you as an example, you had a non-payer combined with, you know, your difficult pregnancy combined with running your own business. So there's like three things there,
Yeah.
and they all amplify each other.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time when I hear people have hit really dark times, it's not one thing. It's this has happened at the same time as this, which has happened at that. And again, all these things also have a knock on, Jay, don't they? So like, I don't know about your situation, but when you're going through difficult times, say like with your wife and your pregnancy, rightly so, your primary focus might not be on your business. It might not be on responding to people. So
Yeah.
then you're going to amplify the RC messages where that people are chasing you going, you haven't come back. And then all of a sudden it starts to mount. So now you've got everything going on, plus people getting annoyed with you. And it builds.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Because you don't want to tell them kind of
Your
what's
personal
going on.
business.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
personal
Like,
life.
look, I'm human. I've got stuff going on.
Yeah.
And from what I've spoken to people, a lot of the time it is like a coming together, like bad times. And looking into the research that I've looked into on things like male suicide, and there are certain triggers that are common. You know, relationship breakdowns is common trigger for people taking their own life. And again, that comes into, well, if you're going through a relationship breakdown, but you work on your own, then you're in your own head all day. You've got no support, no one to talk to. And then maybe, you know, you're not quite on point at work. So
you're not getting through the work as quick.
Yeah. So then you're chasing up your money. So now you've got money, isolation, and a relationship breakdown coming together. Do you know what I mean? It seems to spiral and build. And
I get that. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
And you see how quick it does happen as well. It doesn't take a lot, does it really?
And it doesn't have to be like one big event. It can be a combination of 5 little things that are swirling round, culminating to a big thing.
And you can't see a way out.
Yeah, exactly. And it feels like everything's on top. Everything's going wrong. Everything in your life has gone pear-shaped. And that's what I'm picking up at. Do I know the answer? No, unfortunately. the only answer that I've got and that I can currently give is reach out for support, talk, ask for help, tell somebody how you're feeling, talk to somebody about what's going on in your life, and just try and have a support network, even if
I
it's
think,
strangers.
mate, I respect what you've done here with the podcast. I think it's brilliant. As you say, I've had in the last, I say, week and a half, I've probably had 3 or 4 messages. People going, look, we've not seen you post much. Are you all right? Are you blah, blah, blah? And some of them people know that what I've been through and stuff. So it's coming out. I mean,
That's good, mate.
there's some things with the way life is at the moment, modern day life, I kind of go, oh, like, I don't kind of like the way some things go. But in terms of fellas are actually reaching out and going, mate, like, are you all right? Like, are you actually all right? Kind of thing. Like, I've seen it before. You said about double asking.
Yeah,
Because we all go, yeah, I'm fine. And deep down, mate, I've been through times you're like, oh, I'm struggling. Or
the other thing I saw, it was on social media. I can't credit who it was because I've seen it a few times, so apologies on that. But is asking somebody how they are on a scale of 1 to 10. So it's not just an I'm okay. Like, how are you on a scale of 1
that's
to
a good
10?
one.
Because blokes are a bit more likely to go, do you know what, mate? I'm a 6. Probably ain't going to go on my 1. But and then you go, okay, well, what's brought you to a 6? And they might say 6 when in fact they're on their knees at a 2, you know. But that's another good way of putting it.
Yeah, I didn't. It's so simple as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just reframing it. And I'm very hypocritical, to be honest, Jay, because I'm not great at speaking out myself.
Yeah.
When I went through what I went through, like relationship breakdown, family court cases, and all that, like, I didn't speak to anyone.
No.
Didn't tell any of my mates.
Yeah, I didn't. I was the same with what I went through.
I would do what you do. I'd take myself off.
But I think it was a case of, and you probably relate to it, I don't want to tell anyone what's going on in case they doubt me. What if I tell people that I'm going through a breakdown or a breakup and they think that you're the bad part of that partnership? Do you know what I mean? Like,
do you know, I don't know. With me, it was weird. It was like at times I really felt like I was being held together by the smallest threads. And I felt that if I addressed it and admitted it, those threads would break. It's kind of like, if I admitted I was broken, I become broken. If I pretend that I'm not broken for long enough, eventually I won't be.
Fake it till you make it.
Exactly, yeah. That's probably what I did, mate. I faked it till I made it with my mental health. Fortunately, I've got my wife around me who I met and recognised things within me that I wasn't addressing. I don't know what would have happened, mate. Like where I was and things, and a few little key moments, you know, that really could have gone different ways for me. You know, not having somebody around me. Because I did the usual stuff, mate. My coping mechanism was probably to drink more, which then, you know, for times I then would go to the gym more. I was always trying to mask it with something.
Yeah, busy yourself.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I'll never know what would have happened had things have gone differently. But there were a few key points in my life where things could have very easily spiraled. You know,
it's mad that you can recognise them as well. Like what we've spoke about today. Like there's points in mine where I go, right, I know where if something happened a different way.
Well, you've talked about one today,
where it's going to go. Like, and then just hope that we don't in our lives, mate, as we go forward, we don't come across them avenues again because, it's.
Quite
I think
often,
recognise it before it goes there, though, isn't it? That's what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, that's what I try to do now. Certainly now, I'm much more vocal. You know, and I've found just complete honesty and openness is how I've managed my own life, I guess, and my own mental health. That's how I do it, because I kind of figure, well, if I talk to somebody, then I'll talk about everything that's going on. Things are going to get picked up a lot earlier. So yeah, it's good to talk, mate. I mean, keep talking about that, but it is, you know, just putting that pressure down and admitting you're struggling is a strength.
Yeah.
You know, the strength in weakness almost. It's to admit that you're struggling. It is a strong thing to do.
Yeah. It's mad when you think about it, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. There's, like I say, there's been a few points in my own life where things could have gone severely in different directions. I could have landed myself in trouble on many occasions and worse. But yeah, all too often when you're in that situation, you don't recognise it. It's only down the line after looking back where you look and think,
dodged a bullet there.
Exactly that, mate.
Almost
yeah. But you know, if you are going through hard times and you're listening to this, hopefully listening to these people's stories, people's lives, gives a little bit of insight and inspiration to reach out and talk.
No,
So,
like it has me.
well, mate, it's been fantastic having you here. I
Mate,
feel
thank
we've
you for
reached
having
a
me.
natural sort of like endpoint. Before we do wrap up, is there anything that we haven't spoken about that you wanted to discuss?
Mate, I'm pretty content with where we've gone.
Good.
Yeah.
And most importantly, mate, for anyone listening, where can people find you, Jay?
On Instagram, mainly, not Facebook. JB Painting and Decorating.
As usual, I'll put Jay's contact details and I'll tag his Instagram profile in the episode description. So if you want to go and give Jay a follow, please do. His details will be in the episode description below, wherever you're listening to this, or just go on Instagram and search JB Painting and Decorating. So yeah, please go and show Jay some support. And while you're at it, go and give the podcast a like, a follow, a subscribe, whatever platform you're on, go and show it some love. It all does make a difference. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you again soon.